Cody Swan. You refer to yourself as the critical thinker at large, and to my satisfaction, after watching many of your videos, you are that. Would you have described yourself as a critical thinker while you were an active Scientologist? If so, why? If not, why not? Thanks, Cody. It's a great question. What it brings to mind for me is my own debunking of my conspiracy mindset that Scientology had sort of instilled in me. And I did that kind of on my own, and I did that while I was still in Scientology. But I want to speak more broadly here, because it's not just any one thing that's going to prove, that I was a critical thinker or that I could be a critical thinker. The fact of the matter is we can all be critical thinkers in certain areas and then totally miss the boat in other areas. And my theory on this, and this is really just my theory, I don't have any study that I can fall back on. I haven't proved this to be true, but I believe it to be true, and I say it often, is that emotional commitment of the kind that we see in destructive cults, right? A commitment to a cause, commitment to a belief, to a mindset, to a worldview, to a way of looking at things, right? Is a way of closeting off or closing off your ability to critically think on that subject or area, because you already know what the truth is. So you don't have to think about it anymore. That's kind of aligned with my definition of faith, which is, those ideas, the truths that you don't have to think about anymore. They exist. They are that. That's how it is. I have faith, right? You don't have to think about it anymore. Now you can think about it more. Obviously, Christian apologists think about it more, right? But generally speaking, it serves to make it so you don't have to think about it anymore. You've settled it. The answers are settled. The questions were asked. These are the answers. I'm not looking anymore. I'm happy with this. This satisfies me. I'm done looking. Now, as you get more and more extreme about these ideas, your ability to critically think about and be objective about these ideas is less and less, because you're glomming on and investing more and more of yourself into these ideas. And what that means in a very real sense is you are making these outside external ideas, you're internalizing them, and you are making them part of your own identity. And when you identify with ideas and beliefs, right, they are part of who you are. And at that point, you are not thinking critically about them anymore. You have fully accepted them. That's kind of my basic theory of how that works. I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. And I've observed this over and over and over again. And I say that it is only on that subject area or that matter that you're invested in so heavily that you won't be able to critically think. You can still critically think about anything else because you're not as heavily invested in those other things as you are in that matter that you can't. So for me, that was me with Scientology. I couldn't think critically about Scientology. Not really. Not until a number of events happened that sort of jarred me awake from some of the nonsense and the extreme, emotional commitment that I had made. So that's what allowed me to start thinking critically about it. But the whole time I was in the church, I was not thinking critically about Scientology. And I did not particularly grow up. I read a lot. I was exposed to a lot of different ideas and a lot of different views of things. And I think that informed my ability to look at things from different angles and be willing to do so. I think reading and travel and experience does that to a person. So I was a voracious reader as a kid. And I think that was, if I had any kind of ability to wonder about or think through or sort of analyze things, it was because of that education and knowledge. But Scientology was presented to me my whole life as something that is not to be questioned. This is just true. This is how it is. And, there you go. So that was how I kind of treated it. So what I mentioned at the beginning of this answer was the conspiracy theory stuff, because this for me was the first point where I think I practiced or used critical thinking in a direction toward Scientology. And it was sort of a via of the conspiracy theory. Scientology's got very deep-seated conspiracy theories. And Hubbard has laid them out. I've talked about them. I made videos about them. They're very deep and very complicated. And they align very much with 9/11 truther, anti-government, even elements of, I mean, you go all the way down and, you know, you get pretty far into the QAnon world, deep state stuff. I mean, Scientology can easily align with that material. Easily. Hubbard's ramblings on stuff, and especially the anti-government stuff he talked about, it's hand in glove with deep state, QAnon, 9/11 truther. You can't trust the governments. You know, the spy network, Big Brother's watching you, all that kind of doom and gloom kind of conspiracy stuff. Hubbard was all about that, and I was too, because of that, right? Because of Hubbard. So when I went out and started doing recruitment post RPF, well, I was off the RPF and I was already a little disaffected at this point, right? As you know from my story with the Sea Org, but I was still keen to help out, and I still was a firm believer in Scientology. So I'm out recruiting people, but then I'm so curious and so voracious about wanting to know more about this conspiracy and who are the players and what's this all about. And I'm digging in, and then what do I run across? Two things. I ran across an article that Popular Mechanics. I ran across the Popular Mechanics takedown, debunk of the 9/11 truther mythology and the fact that it was an inside job, that 9/11 had to be an inside job, and that it had to be explosives planted up and down the Twin Towers that were the cause of the buildings coming down. That had to be how it was. Well, Popular Mechanics did a whole article debunking all of that. And I saw a link to that. I was looking up conspiracy theory stuff. I had internet access enough to be able to do that. This was when I was out doing recruitment and doing projects. I wasn't on the base. And I saw this debunking thing, and I went, huh, there's debunking material on this. Well, that's all probably just state-sponsored nonsense, and counter intel and, this kind of stuff, right? So I ignored it for a little while, but then I saw a picture. I saw some photo of, I think it was building 11 or something. It was one of the smaller buildings that had come down, and there was this whole conspiracy theory about it. And basically what I saw was a picture from another angle to debunk the conspiracy side. The conspiracy theorists were only looking at this building from one angle. And if you look at it from another angle and you start putting the pieces together, you see that firemen didn't pull it down, and that's not what happened. And that's what I learned looking at this picture and seeing the narrative. I went, wait a second, hold on, that got through. And I was like, wait a minute. And then I went, well, hold on. Okay, there's this Popular Mechanics thing. And then I went and looked it up and I read it. And I was like, oh. And the first thing that I realized was you could create an entire narrative with a picture. And you could debunk that entire narrative with a picture of the same thing from another angle. Like, oh, right, duh. If you only look at it from one side, you're only going to see one thing. You're going to see it one way. But if you look at it another way, right, you get a three-dimensional view of the thing, right? This was the very, very root beginnings of my idea of two-dimensional versus three-dimensional thinking about things. And conspiracy theorists are very two-dimensional thinkers in many ways. So anyway, it was kind of interesting. But that I think was the beginning of my active critical thinking and pushback against Scientology narratives. Not organizational bullshit and nonsense, not David Miscavige's crap, but the actual L. Ron Hubbard inspired stuff. And that was important because that was a real important crack in the shell. So anyway, long story short, I've been telling this in a real long version, but it's a great question, and so thank you for asking it, because it really was the beginning of where I feel in my life I actually really started using something called critical thinking, and I didn't even know what to call it. I didn't think about it that way. I wouldn't have identified it as that. I just was like, wait a second, this is weird. I guess I would have called it debunking or something, but that was the first time that was a big deal, and that was when I was still in, and that's a story for you.